The most terrifying truth about your parenting is that, in your worst moments, you are not the one raising your child. A ghost is. It reveals itself in the blink of an eye. A plastic cup slips from tiny fingers. Milk splatters across the kitchen tiles. It is a completely harmless accident. A completely normal byproduct of a small child learning how gravity works. But that is not how your body registers it. Instantly, a surge of heat rushes up your neck. Your vision narrows. Your chest tightens. Your heart begins to pound with an erratic, frantic rhythm you haven't felt since you were 7 years old. Before your rational, adult mind can even process what has happened, a sharp, terrifyingly harsh voice rips out of your throat. A reaction entirely disproportionate to the crime of spilled milk. You see your toddler flinch. You see their tiny shoulders rise. You see their eyes widen in sudden, sheer panic. And then, the crushing wave of guilt hits you. You look down at your shaking hands. The silence in the room is deafening. You swore you would never be this way. You read the gentle parenting books. You consumed the modern psychology podcasts. You made a silent, ironclad vow over their crib on the day they were born that you would break the cycle. You promised you would never, ever make your child feel the way you were made to feel. Yet, in that singular split second, all your logic, all your fierce love, and all your promises simply evaporated. You became a passenger in your own body. You transformed into the exact thing you feared the most. Why? Because the person who just yelled at your toddler wasn't the adult you. It was the terrified, deeply bruised child you used to be. When that cup hit the floor, your mind didn't see a clumsy baby. It saw a massive, looming threat. You experienced a catastrophic collision of timelines. The safe, warm nursery of today merged violently with the unpredictable childhood home of your past. Your reaction wasn't about the milk. It was an echo. An aggressive, involuntary echo of the shame, the fear, and the harsh punishment you endured decades ago for making the exact same innocent mistake. This is the silent plague of the modern, highly invested parent. We spend months preparing our homes, carefully curating our nurseries, and meticulously planning our baby's future. But we profoundly underestimate the destructive power of our own unhealed inner child. We unknowingly carry these ghosts into the nursery. They sit quietly in the rocking chair. They hover right beside you at the changing table. And they wait patiently for a moment of sleep deprivation, a sudden loud noise, or a single spilled cup to step forward and take total control. It leaves you feeling monstrous. It leaves you awake at 2 a.m, staring at the ceiling, terrified that you are quietly and irreversibly damaging the fragile psychology of the human being you love more than life itself. You are fighting an invisible enemy that seems to bypass your free will entirely. But surviving this, and saving your child from the echoes of your past, requires looking right past your guilt. How does a buried, forgotten memory from decades ago hijack your body, forcing you to act before you even realize you've opened your mouth? The answer isn't a failure of your love, it is hiding in the darkest, most ancient wiring of your nervous system. To understand why you lose control, you have to look inside the oldest part of your brain. Deep within the temporal lobe lies an almond-shaped cluster of neurons called the amygdala. It is your brain's primal smoke detector. Its sole, ruthless purpose is survival. And it has one fundamental flaw: the amygdala does not know what time it is. It has no concept of past or present. It only knows safe or danger. When you were a child, and a parent raged at you, or neglected you, or made your love feel conditional, your amygdala recorded every detail of that environment. It memorized the sudden tension in the room. The sharp pitch of an angry voice. The specific feeling of helplessness freezing your chest. It catalogued these sensory details as lethal threats. Why? Because when you are small, and entirely dependent on the adults around you, the terrifying anger of a caregiver is not just upsetting. To your nervous system, it feels like death. Decades pass. You grow up. You build a life. You have a child of your own. Then, your toddler pushes a boundary. They scream in a crowded grocery store, or they violently knock a glass of milk across a clean floor. Logically, your adult mind knows this is a minor, everyday inconvenience. But your amygdala doesn't do logic. It recognizes the emotional signature of the moment. It senses the sudden chaos, the overwhelming noise, the creeping loss of control. Instantly, the ancient alarm sounds. Within milliseconds, your nervous system is flooded with a toxic wash of cortisol and adrenaline. And here is where the true terror lies. As these stress hormones spike, your prefrontal cortex, the highly evolved, rational part of your brain right behind your forehead, shuts down. This is the part of your brain that reads the modern parenting books. The part that listens to the psychology podcasts. The part that holds your empathy, your patience, and your fierce, unconditional love for your child. In a fraction of a second, it goes completely offline. Biologically speaking, you are no longer a modern, thinking adult. You are a cornered organism thrown into a state of primal survival. This phenomenon is an amygdala hijack. This is the exact reason why logic, counting to 10, and gentle parenting scripts completely fail you in the heat of a severe trigger. You cannot think your way out of a reaction when the biological machinery required for rational thought has been violently unplugged from the power grid. Your body is keeping score. It is violently overreacting to a present reality because it is desperately trying to protect you from a phantom of the past. The suppressed biological defenses you could not safely use as a terrified child, the urge to fight, to yell, to overpower, to assert ultimate control, are finally being unleashed. But tragically, the threat isn't a towering, abusive adult anymore. The threat is a tiny, innocent baby. This is the chilling mechanics of generational trauma. It doesn't require you to be a bad parent. It doesn't require a lack of love. It only requires a nervous system functioning exactly as it was built to, remembering agonizing pain, and aggressively trying to prevent it from happening again. And as you stand there, towering over your trembling toddler, your child's own amygdala begins to record the event. The cycle silently replicates itself, downloading your unhealed trauma directly into their rapidly developing brain. It feels inescapable. A cold, mechanical destiny. If your brain is physically hardwired to repeat the very trauma you swore you'd protect your baby from, does that mean your child is biologically doomed to inherit your pain? Or is there a hidden backdoor in your anatomy? The tragedy of the hijacked brain is what happens in the silent aftermath. Look closely at the nursery. It looks like a pristine sanctuary. You have curated the softest colors, the perfect white noise machines, and the safest toys. But to a developing baby, the physical environment is completely secondary. Their true environment is you. Your nervous system is their atmosphere. Infants and toddlers are not just small humans, they are biological mirrors. Long before they can understand a single word of language, they are perfectly fluent in the microscopic shifts of your physiology. They track the sudden dilation of your pupils. They feel the rigid, defensive tension locking your jaw. They absorb the erratic, shallow spikes in your breathing. When your unhealed trauma steps into the driver's seat, your child's body instantly registers a predator in the room. And this is where the most devastating illusion of parenthood occurs. When that milk spills, and the visceral panic takes over, you believe there is an adult and a child in the room. But there isn't. The adult has left the building. In that moment of pure, triggered reactivity, there are actually two children standing in the kitchen. There is your literal toddler, startled and crying over the broken cup. And there is your psychological inner child, screaming out from decades of unaddressed pain, desperate for the absolute control and safety they were once brutally denied. It is a catastrophic collision of two terrified children, both desperately crying out for a protector who isn't there. But only one of them has the physical power, the looming size, and the booming voice of a full-grown adult. The toddler stands no chance. When the adrenaline finally recedes and the cortisol drains from your bloodstream, your adult prefrontal cortex slowly reboots. You look down, and the agonizing reality of what just happened crashes over you. You hear the echo of your own voice hanging in the heavy silence, and it chills you to the very marrow of your bones. Because it wasn't your voice. It was the exact tone, the exact harsh cadence, and perhaps even the exact cruel words of the caregiver who broke your heart when you were little. You have involuntarily become the ghost you spent your entire life running from. This is the terrifying mirror of parenting. Your child is not just triggering you, they are holding up a high-definition reflection of your deepest, most neglected wounds. And the stakes of ignoring this reflection are astronomical. You are not just having a bad afternoon. You are drafting the foundational architectural code of your child's brain. If your nervous system remains a volatile minefield of unhealed triggers, your child will physically adapt to survive you. They will learn to walk on eggshells. They will learn to relentlessly scan your moods before they even learn to read a book. They will internalize your erratic, terrifying reactions as proof of their own fundamental unworthiness. The toxic cycle of generational trauma will seamlessly bridge the gap from your past into their future, locking them into the exact same invisible prison you are fighting so desperately to escape. Staring into this terrifying mirror is the most painful trial of parenthood. But what if the exact same biological machinery that built these toxic reflexes could be weaponized to dismantle them forever? The human brain is not a life sentence. It is a living, breathing, profoundly mutable organ. And the very same biological mechanisms that trapped you in this cycle are the exact tools you will use to shatter it. Welcome to the miraculous reality of neuroplasticity. For decades, science believed that by the time you reached adulthood, your brain was effectively set in concrete. Your personality, your reactions, and your deeply ingrained trauma responses were considered permanent fixtures of your anatomy. We now know this is unequivocally false. Your brain is not concrete. It is clay. It is actively remodeling itself every single day based on how you use it. There is a foundational rule in neuroscience: neurons that fire together, wire together. Right now, in your nervous system, the neurological connection between a trigger, like a child spilling milk, and your reaction of blinding rage is an 8-lane, high-speed superhighway. It was paved in your childhood, reinforced through years of repetition, and heavily coated in the myelin sheath, a biological insulation that makes the electrical signal travel at lightning speed. When the cup drops, the signal flies down this superhighway effortlessly. You react without thinking because your brain has optimized this specific route for sheer speed. To break the cycle, you do not need a time machine to fix your childhood. You need a bulldozer to tear up that highway. The secret lies in a microscopic window of time known as the microsecond gap. Neurologically, between the exact moment of the stimulus, the milk hitting the floor, and the moment your amygdala fully hijacks your prefrontal cortex, there is a tiny, fleeting fraction of a second. It is a space of pure potential. In that microscopic gap, the electrical signal in your brain is standing at a fork in the road. If you do nothing, it will instinctively take the 8-lane superhighway of rage. But if you can learn to expand that gap, if you can force your brain to pause for just one single second, you force that electrical signal to veer off the highway and hack its way into the unmapped, dense jungle of your brain. It feels agonizingly unnatural. It requires a tremendous amount of conscious, excruciating effort to force your nervous system away from its default defense mechanism. Your body will scream at you to yell, to control, to unleash the panic. But every single time you stand in the wreckage of a spilled cup, take a deep breath, and choose to speak softly instead of screaming, something miraculous happens on a microscopic level. You lay down a single, fragile new neural pathway. Do it twice, and that pathway becomes a little wider. Do it 100 times, and it begins to pave over. Slowly, methodically, you are physically rewiring the architecture of your brain. As you build this new pathway of patience and emotional regulation, the old superhighway of trauma suffers from neglect. The biological insulation degrades. The connection weakens. The ghost begins to starve. You are not just changing your behavior. You are altering your physical neurochemistry. You are becoming a fundamentally different biological organism. You now hold the blueprint to rebuild your brain, but knowing the science won't save you when the milk shatters on the floor and the panic floods your veins. How do you actually kill a trigger in the exact millisecond it strikes? How do you kill a trigger in the exact millisecond it strikes? You stop trying to fight it with your mind, and you weaponize your body. When the glass shatters and the visceral panic floods your veins, your first and only instinct must be silence. Do not open your mouth. Your logic is offline, and whatever words come out will belong to the ghost. Instead, you must force your prefrontal cortex to reboot. It requires oxygen, and it requires grounding. Take one sharp, deep intake of air. Drop your rigid shoulders. Feel the physical weight of your feet pressing into the floorboards. This is a biological override. It forces your terrified nervous system to look around and acknowledge the present reality. It tells your amygdala that there is no predator in the room. You are safe. You are the adult. And it is just milk. By creating this physical pause, you widen the microsecond gap. You buy your rational brain the time it needs to come back online. And when it does, you look down at the tiny, trembling human standing in the puddle. You see their wide eyes. You see their fear. But instead of pouring gasoline on that fear, you kneel down. You soften your face. You hand them a towel and you calmly say, "It's okay. Accidents happen." In that beautifully mundane moment, a profound, invisible shockwave ripples backward and forward through your family tree. You have just broken a century-old curse with a paper towel. This is the agonizing, glorious work of cycle breaking. It means accepting the unfair reality that you must do the heavy, exhausting labor of reparenting your own inner child, so your actual baby doesn't have to do it for you. It means you are willingly acting as a dam, absorbing the crushing weight of your generational history so that the waters on the other side remain perfectly still. Imagine the sheer, breathtaking freedom of the legacy you are building. Because of your conscious, relentless work in that microsecond gap, your child will never have to shrink themselves to keep you calm. They will never learn to flinch at a sudden noise or a dropped plate. They will not spend their entire adult life sitting on a therapist's couch trying to unlearn their childhood. They will receive the ultimate gift, an emotional blank slate. They will enter the world with a nervous system beautifully wired for deep connection, instead of rigidly armored for primal protection. All the inherited grief, the silent terror, and the explosive panic, it all stops here. It ends in your nursery. You hold the power to be the final destination for generations of unhealed pain. But the true test arrives tomorrow, when the next glass shatters. Who will be the one to answer, the ghost of your past, or the parent your baby desperately needs right now?